Hey everybody, this is Jason Key from SBGrid at Harvard Medical School. Thanks for joining today. We'll go ahead and get started. So today is yours truly, along with Carol Herre, both from SBGrid here, and we're going to talk about some of the new things we're working on. So the SBGrid environment historically had all the environment variables and all the settings for all titles built into the single environment. As the environment grows and gets up to 400 plus applications, we still are maintaining that, but it becomes more and more challenging. As we go forward, we have built, and by we I mean Carol has built a new tool that we call Capsules that allows applications to build their own environments or set their own environments when they run. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to her now. So Carol is a software release engineer here in our group. She's been with us for some time. So Carol, Herre.
Thanks, Jason. I'm going to talk to you about capsules, which is the new environment. So what exactly is a capsule? By definition, a capsule is a shell for packaging something. And that's exactly what we're using it as. It's a method of packaging executables for execution, which seems kind of redundant. Our capsules consist of two pieces, predominantly the environment description and the executable itself. The execution of a capsule, what it does is it initializes its environment that it needs, it runs that executable, and then it removes the environment. This is just a little bit about the terminology in case you come back and you're confused. I use the term app or application to refer to any title that's in our tree. An executable is any file that has the execute bit set in that application. The capsule is generated. We don't build these by hand. That's what differentiates it from a general wrapper. var stands for environment variable, and then duplicate is any executable that exists in multiple apps. It has the same name. It may not do the same job, but it looks the same from the environment perspective because they're named the same. So why did we go to capsules? Jason touched on this a little bit. Initially, the SBGrid environment was set up as this huge shell. And when you have 10 programs, it's not so bad. And when you have 20, it's not so bad. But as you start to add more and more and more, it becomes unwieldy. We gave users access to the software or the executables that they needed through path or alias. And when you had the environment set up, it was set up with everything that was needed for all apps. The big drawback is that the shell environment, especially the path, is very extensive. There's not an easy way to manage duplicates, and applications oftentimes had conflicting environment requirements, which means if you're the person doing the installation, you had to take that into account so that the user could use the software. So capsules were designed to address this large environment. We wanted to keep the environment as small as possible. Generally, we only add one bin to the user's path. We wanted to be able to give the user an easy way to see and choose the duplicates, so that when they wanted to run a command that happens to exist in multiple applications, they were getting the one they wanted, not the one that they got by accident. And we wanted to remove the conflicting environmental settings like Python path and LD library path. The big win out of this is with the change in the environment, the shell initializes faster, and therefore a lot of the applications themselves appear to run faster. So why did we do capsules? So when we were working on this to set them up, we had some goals, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to keep the notion that if you're working in the monolithic environment or the previous environment in capsules, it should be completely transparent to you. You shouldn't have to do anything different. We wanted the software to run out of the box. We didn't want the user to have to do anything to set up the environment, such as load this or source this. We just wanted it to be that one source command, sbgrid.shrc or cshrc. We wanted it to run as advertised by the original developer. We didn't want to have to sort of rewrite the original developer's documentation. People should be able to cut and paste things from tutorials and examples and get the same results. We wanted to make sure that you could modify overrides is easy and in a sense dynamic. And then we also wanted you to make sure that you had control over which executable you're using. So here are some specifics about it. So how do you know if you're using capsules? So the first thing is SBGrid is currently set up to opt in, and by default it's set as inactive. If you install using the GUI or the command line, the new tools, they're actually set up to be in capsules by default. We have some other grids that actually use capsules as their default. One of those is BioGrids, if you're a BioGrid user. The way you can tell what the status is, not only does it show up on your initialization screen, but you can run the command sbcap space status, and that will return back whether capsules are active or inactive. You can turn capsules on and off with the SBCap on and SBCap off, and that toggles it. When you turn them on, they stay on until you turn them off. So every time you create a new shell, the capsules will stay on. And if you want to return back to your default, you can set it back with SBCap reset. In these slides, all of the text that you would type is and its responses are in these boxes, just so you know that's why that's there. So there's a variety of options that we provide with capsules, and all of them start with --SB. And the applications or focused options start with --SBApp : followed by a letter. So for example, SBApp : and then there's a set of letters. And we'll go over some of those as we go on through the talk. Generally, the capsule options, general capsule options, are --SB and then whatever the command is, which, env, man, and help are the ones that are currently implemented. Okay, so help. So there's a variety of help functions that are built into capsules. These options are differentiated from the executables options. The executable options are whatever the developer says. These are differentiated from the executable options with that --SB. So you can do --SB help, which gives you details about using capsules in general, and it's very similar to what's on the capsule wiki page. You can do SBApp : help, which gives you a short description of the application focused options. Capital H gives you the more details, and then R actually gives you the return codes. So just to let you see what these look like. This is kind of small, but this is what the help looks like. It actually covers 2 pages. It's a very general, helpful command to look at. Gives you a lot of detail. It also includes in it what the things that are part of SBApp help. So, and that's the second page. And it has some examples in it, etc. This is the short help for refine. You can see how it says, SBAppH, and then it tells you that refine actually exists in 3 executables. I should say 3 applications. Execute one of the 3 executables. Refine exists in 3 applications, and then it gives you the details about what you can look at there. And then this is the capital H help, and you can see how it gives you more details. It tells you that the application can be designated in 4 ways, and these are the return codes, and then the R just gives you the return codes. I publicize the return codes because if you're doing any scripting, you need to be aware of these so you can capture them if you need to. So duplicates. An executable may exist in multiple application, and an example is refine where it said, execute one of three. Generally, the one you get is determined by your environment. In some cases, you can't even tell that it does exist in multiple locations. Capsules help you manage these. So how can you tell if there are duplicates? The -L capital and lowercase lists out all of the information with respect to the list of applications that contain that executable. Of course, this only applies to executables that are part of SBGrid. If the executable lives in like user bin or someplace else, that's not going to be included. So if the lowercase L, you can see refine exists here in 3 applications, Buster, eMan, and GPHL. And then if you do the capital L, it tells you not only that it lives in those 3 applications, but it tells you all the information about those applications, what versions are available, and this is completely related to what you have installed, what versions are available, and what the variable is to override the version. So I happen to have run these commands on systems that are servers, and so it has a full SBGrid installation in it. So how do you choose which application? So now you know you have a duplicate and you want to choose an application. So one of the things you can do is you can use the SPAppD and give it the app name, and that will automatically use that application. Or you can do an SPAppS, which will print out a list, and then it'll ask you to select from the list, and then it will work for that application. You can also do it with an environment variable. The environment variables are all of the form _ the executable in all uppercase, and then you set it to whatever application you want to. There's also, which is a good way to test things if you just want to, like, oh, I want to try it from this application versus that application. You can just kind of test it and not really make a permanent change to your environment with that. And then you can also use the .SBGrid Capsules directory for something that you want to do more permanently. And if you wanted to define it by your site or by your lab, you could use the program's local capsules. So version overrides, Jason talked a little bit about version overrides. The mechanism that you use for version overrides in the .SBGrid.conf, which works in the monolithic environment, also works in the capsule environment. You do it exactly the same way. So if you make a change in that, the capsules will recognize that change. You can also do it simply by setting the app_x variable, which you can get from that information from the SPAppD, capital L. You can set the version that way in your shell, and it will do it until that shell goes away. Or if you just want to do it like once to try a different version, you can actually do it on the line with the capsule by setting the environment app_x equals version right before. As you can see, ENV. That'll just set it for the next execution. So I was going to do a little bit of a demo. I haven't worked with Jason's machine, so hopefully this will all work for me. So the first thing is I'm going to see if I have capsules turned on. Oh, if I could type. So if it's active, if they're active, it'll come back active. If they're not, it'll come back inactive. So the executable MKDSSP exists both in CCP4 and DSSP. I want to look at the man page. And because the capsule creates the environment, You can't just do man. So if a developer builds something that does analysis and he calls it analyze, and somebody else builds something that does analysis and he calls it analyze or she calls it analyze, they're the same executable. There are different executables with the same name, and you need to be able to control which one you're going to work with, right? In some cases, software does have the exact same tool in it, maybe at different versions or maybe built with different options, because that's the version or what that tool or what that developer needed for his application. Python, you'll see, occurs many times in our programs too. Right. So if I do a man page, well, first of all, let's see what the default is. So if you don't tell it which one to use, it's going to use whatever the default is. And you can use SPAppD to find out what the default is. In this case, the default is going to use the one from CCP4 version 7.0. If you had multiple versions of CCP4 installed, it would still tell you which of those versions it's going to use, but it would also tell you that there are other versions available. So I happen to know that DSSP application has the man page, so I want to look at that. So I'm going to do I don't know if it does on it'll be interesting. I don't know if it does on Mac. It does on Linux. Oh, it does. So that will actually give you the man page if the user has provided one. So if I wanted to, okay. So Refine happens to exist in a lot of, maybe not in your case. So Refine in here is in 2 applications. So it tells me, if I do the capital L, it not only tells me the applications, but it tells me which versions I have installed. We can look at the default. The default happens to be Buster. If you wanted to use Refine, if you always wanted to use Refine from eMan, you could set it by setting the Refine variable. That's straight eMan, right? Now, if I do Refine SBWitch, it should tell me that it's using the one from eMan. So unset actually unsets the environment variable, so it's no longer there. But you can also put that into a file in the ~SBGrid Capsules _Capsules, and then every shell will use it. If you just set it in the environment variable here, it'll only be active in this instance of the terminal and any spawned terminals from here down. But that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
So I have a question, or maybe can you talk a little bit about, so when you call an executable, what happens if that executable calls an executable? What happens if I call something in CCP4 and it calls something else from CCP4, but maybe there's a duplicate? How do I know what's going to happen?
So, okay, so it depends. If you call if you have an executable that calls another executable and it's not part of that particular release and version, then it calls a capsule. So if you have something in CCP4 and it calls something that exists in CCP4 but in an older version, but doesn't exist in the current version, in the version you're in. So if you're inside of an application at a particular version, that application has precedence. So if you call something and it exists in that application, in that version, then that's the one that's going to be used by default. If you want to use something different, you can set it in with the variable, or actually in this case you could set it with the file, with the default file, the application override file. The reason why I did it that way is that if you were inside of an application, if you were running something from an application and it always dropped back to a capsule and it turned out that one wasn't the default, then you might get something from a completely different application, and it seemed that the application and version should have precedence over anything else. And then if you're not staying sort of in that application, in that environment, that you should be the one that has to make the change. Does that not make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of a little bit complicated. But if you do call something that's a capsule and is in another application, then it will actually go to that application and will use its capsule and will set up its environment, will do what it needs to do. And the interesting thing is that it doesn't, like typically a shell, the next shell completely inherits the environment from the previous. It doesn't do that. It creates the environment that it needs, it executes. If it calls something in its process of its execution, it only creates the environment that that object that it's calling requires. It doesn't inherit. It doesn't inherit things, and that's how we deal with, conflicting variables such as Python path and things like that.
Let's see. So here's a couple of questions.
Can you globally turn on capsules by default for all users? Yes, you can. So it's done by grids. And so in /program share, I can show it here. There's a file, and in here, this file, oh.
So I thought you could just turn it on with the SBCap command.
You can, but that's for each individual. He wants to turn it on for the site. Basically, this file is designed to, and I didn't realize, this file is designed to set the cap default for that particular grid. So, but I don't know how that got changed. That must be something that they did in the installer.
Maybe, but it is possible to
right.
do.
Yes,
it is possible. So yeah, we can.
Yeah, and we probably should make a local
option.
So because this would get overwritten.
Yeah.
That's a good that's a good point. I can make that a local option so that you can do it in the /programs local.
Yeah. There was one other question here. There's two. Yes, you might want to, I don't think everybody can see it. So
I'm sorry. So for eman2, we typically preface commands with MPI run eman2 in capsules. Is this still necessary? Yes. But the thing is that's different is that you will actually be using MPI run .eman2, which happens to be a capsule. Does that, maybe.
I guess the bigger question is, with MPI run commands, MPI is built, applications are built against MPI, and they need to use the same MPI run executable that they were built against. Some software needs a different version of MPI than others, which makes it complicated to use the path. So there's two ways to do that. One, we usually try to standardize on an MPI, and that's the default MPI run in the tree. And most things use that. Applications that can't use that, like eman2, we make an MPI run .eman2, and then that. So when we build the capsules, that still exists and you can still use it. We have a prototype, sort of beta version capsule of MPI run that will run with all applications and just will use a pre-configured application-specific MPI that it knows which MPI it should be using, and you won't have to care which MPI run. That's still in our sort of testing phase, but we hope to get that out. And then if that works out, and I think it will, it's been working in our tests, but if that works globally, we would have one MPI run, and you wouldn't have to use any others. And but that's not currently in place. So, but it's on the way. It's something we've been working to make happen for a while, because making application-specific MPI runs is not always intuitive. Luckily, there's only a couple, right? There's only eman2. I think maybe Sphire's got one because it's basically eman2 under the hood, and maybe one others. They all otherwise pretty much use the same MPI run, but hopefully that's a thing of the past very soon.
So, and I don't know if this was clear, but the capsules themselves are programmatically generated. So they're not written by humans. We write a definition file. Actually, it's the same definition file we use to build the monolithic environment. But we write a definition file that says this is what this application requires in its environment, and that's what we use. The capsules themselves are built programmatically. So if there's an executable like MPI run.eman2 that's in the application, it will actually become encapsulated itself. And so when you run that, it's a capsule, and you can, and you should be able to use it exactly like you would have used it in the previous environment. That was one of our big goals.
Yeah, and I should say that if you're using capsules and you see in some way or some case that it doesn't work exactly the same as it did in the other environment in scripts, reach out and let us know. We've been using it for a while now. It's in use in a lot of places, and I think we've gotten a lot of user feedback, and we've done a pretty solid job. I think things are working. I haven't seen any issues specific to capsules, but if you see one, let us know.
Yeah, definitely. Or if you have suggestions, like if you have a suggestion about, it would be so much easier if, we would always take that and consider it. And a lot of these things are reasonable to implement. The capsules actually gives us a lot of flexibility to implement things across all applications pretty easily. So.
All right. Well, if that's it, thank you everyone for joining. If you think of any questions, or if you have other questions that you'd like to, by all means, you can email us at bugs@sbgrid.org. Happy to discuss further, talk about any questions or problems you might have with the capsule environment, with the SBGrid install clients, or anything else. So, and it's 1 o'clock, so we'll wrap it up. Thanks all. Thanks for joining. Bye.